The Harvest. These stories about my UNC years must fly by, or I risk making you happy twice. Mom warned me about making you happy twice. My time at UNC was sweet because of the work of the black students before me who had struggled there, and the collection of black students, black faculty, and black staff who continued that struggle, with whom I got to share space. Pushing, pulling, dreaming, gaining, and losing ground, we became a microcosm of black America in a quasi-liberal, racist white space. The BSM, or Black Student Movement, and the African and African American Studies Department were my chief growth vehicles. Sonia Hayes Stone, head of the African American Studies program, was a teacher, sister, and a comrade. Don't even get me started. Durham and its WAFR radio station were cultural and musical blessings. Dip's Country Kitchen in Chapel Hill and Green Castle Restaurant in Durham kept me alive. Durham's North Carolina Central University was near the Green Candle. UNC brought in Dr. James Brewer from this famed black university to teach a black studies course at UNC. I called him a black star in a sea of whiteness. We called him Doc. His pipe was part of his presentation. Each class was filled to the brim, and each time this scholar and master story chef would serve up stories on a plate of call and response. Before we knew it, class was over. One particular day, the class lingered with me as I walked to my next class. I don't know what he said in that class. It was a wave. His powerful, nurturing, instructive, and affirming stories flowed in and through me. I kept walking and thinking of a way to celebrate this African in me. I thought of a party, but they're too fleeting. I wanted this celebration to last and last and last. Just before reaching Bingham Hall, the speech communication building, I heard a voice seeking to solve my dilemma. Change your name. Take an African name. It said, that way, anytime anyone called your name, they were joining your celebration of your Africanness. I thought of organizations that required or encouraged name changes, but I wasn't a part of any. The voice spoke again in deeper tones. Change your name. When I started seriously considering it, two other voices rushed forward. One belonged to my mother. You gonna do what? In deeper tones, Dad said, son, you gonna do what? I pushed those two away to give myself more time. Over the next few weeks, I walked around in the idea. That's right. I walked around in the idea, looking from multiple angles. My dad would have the most problem with it, but he's the one who taught me to do it all the way or not to do it at all. I decided to arrange for that lifelong party by changing my name from Philip Mark Getty to an African name. Which one? I had no clue. How do I choose an African name? My research started with my friend Amandi from Kenya. At the International Student Center, I decided that one of my three names would come from East Africa. There was a peacefulness about Amandi. I became all ears and finally settled on Wekesa from the Luo of Kenya. It translated into the harvest. I embraced the idea of working to become a man representing a harvest to my people through my life and my work. I hit the stacks, that's the library, to study more about Kenya. I also crashed some Nigerian events with another friend, Namdi. I related to West Africa and the passion. Namdi mentioned the name Olatunji. Like Baba Olatunji and his drums of passion. I said this album was in my collection. Jingle, jingle ba. Jingle, jingle ba was my favorite cut. I left to study more and to listen more. Honor and riches reawakens. The words touch me. The Africa that had languished beneath my shame or cowered in fear was reawakening. Olatunji would become my middle name. All of the North African names I heard or read about were Muslim. I wanted an indigenous African language name. My idea about a name from North, East, South, and West was becoming a bit too ambitious. I scaled back to look for one more name. Talking to both Africans and African Americans, someone mentioned Madzimoyo. It represented the Ngoni from South and Central Africa. The translations, water of life, or big-spirited, one with a big heart, who gives a lot of himself or herself, were on target. One of my father's instructions was, son, don't let nobody beat you giving. Madzimoyo would become my last name. I used the university law library to review state statutes and successful briefs. It was not complicated. I started wearing the name on campus to get a feel for it. It felt good. Everyone was supportive. Still, I couldn't shake a fear about what it might mark me for. Brother Pete O'Neill had not long ago been arrested on trumped-up charges, and the Chicago police had assassinated Fred Hampton. I wasn't in the Black Panther Party, nor did I share such limelight. My fears persisted, but were no match for my family's instruction. If you're going to do it all the way. A friend typed up the paperwork on the appropriate legal paper. I placed it in a slim Samsonite briefcase, put on my rarely worn three-piece suit, and headed to Hillsborough, the county seat. I was alone. They called my name. I walked up and presented my paperwork. The judge barely looked at me. He scanned the paperwork, stamped it, and said, "That'll be $15. No questions, no evil looks, no photographs or gathering of police. I was relieved and excited. I did it. Now I was legally Wekesa Olatunji Madzimoyo. I had just two more hurdles, Mom and Dad. I traveled home and met with each separately. Remember, they separated when I was 5. My mother wanted to know why. Why did I decide to change my name? She was concerned that some organization had poisoned my mind. I told her the story of Dr. Brewer and about my celebrating my Africanness. I translated each name and shared what they meant to me. After practicing my name a few times, she smiled and shocked me. Can I take an African name? Absolutely, I said. After looking through some of my African name books that I just happened to have in the car, she fell in love with Tulinagwe. It means God is with us. Mom was a Christian evangelist, so that lined up perfectly. Overhearing our conversation, my sisters followed Mom's lead. Each chose African names, Weseme, Mandisa, Kiziwande. Later, another of my sisters would take the name Olibisa, and my brother would be inspired to add Fadil Akil Montsho. I'm glad I stopped by Mom's first. Dad asked the same question. I gave him the same answers. The harvest, the honor, the big spirit giving a lot of himself or herself. He listened, then felt quiet. I held my breath. I will not call you by that name. Dad, the fight is not against you. I'm not trying to embarrass you or separate from you. It's against this racist system. He was unmoved. Substituting anger for my sadness would only make matters worse. So I had to go deeper. I took a deep sigh and said, Dad, I'm your son. You can call me whatever you want to call me. Taking this name is one way I stand on your shoulders. The best of what you taught me is African. Hard work, justice, truth, helping others, balance, and reciprocity. I don't want to live those out under the Scottish Irish oppressor's banner. I had hoped that my words would touch him because every one of them was true, but they were anemic. He remained steadfast and wouldn't call me by my African name. I remained steadfast, and I wouldn't let my name change drive a wedge between us. It would take time. I was prepared for the long distance journey. Driving away, I counted it as a good day. My mother and siblings were taking African names. My dad and I remained connected, and a new man had been born, Wekesa Olatunji Madzimoyo. Rooted in African American strength, survival, adaptation, insights, and recreations of Africa on these shores, while reaching for the ancient wisdom and cultural traditions that made Africa great, made our survival possible and the future bright. A luta continua.